The war is on in the Democratic Party to assign blame for Kamala Harris's loss and to help set the narrative for what will come next. To boil it down, you basically got a maintain the status quo faction going up against a burn it all down faction. On one side, you've effectively got all the people who were most directly implicated in this loss. You got the donors, consultants, operatives, and establishment Democrats who by and large authored this campaign, and the media figures who helped to construct and enforce this iteration of the Democratic Party. They're complicit in destroying Bernie's movement, elevating Biden, blocking a 2024 primary, and setting the messaging direction of the Dem Party in general and the Kamala Harris campaign specifically. They believed that an anti-Trump coalition, heavily reliant on suburban Liz Cheney voters, could be assembled and activated and win. Harris' campaign strategy was by and large designed to appeal to this imagined affluent coalition. This group is interested in any and all arguments that can effectively maintain the current Democratic Party status quo. That includes punching left, which again is no different from the longtime Democratic Party status quo, and denying that there's really any problem whatsoever. At war with this camp are those who believe that the Democratic Party lost the working class and with it the election because they failed that working class. AOC, Bernie, Ro Khanna, those are some of the proponents, but there have been a few surprising mainstream allies in the fight. People like Senator Chris Murphy and even to my absolute shock, David Brooks. These folks have correctly suggested that Democrats take a lesson from Bernie Sanders, embrace real economic populism, piss off their high-income base and donor class, and lean into the politics of class war. This camp, in which I am included, is the most correct, but also has the biggest obstacles in front of it, since big money interests are not likely to just abandon their interest in the Democratic Party. Well, folks, we got a new salvo in this war between the status quo and burn it down factions in the form of a New York Times op-ed by John Fetterman's former chief of staff. In an op-ed titled, "When Will Democrats Learn to Say No?" Adam Gentleson argues that Democrats are losing because they cater too much to the world of left interest groups. In making the argument, he name-checks ACLU, Sunrise, Justice Democrats, and Working Families Party for pushing Kamala back in 2020 to support the current law on surgeries for transgender prisoners, to decriminalize border crossings, and for generally attempting to push Democrats left on criminal justice reform. This op-ed postures as an argument for Democratic Party reform, but in actuality, it already reflects the 2024 reality of the Democratic Party. This analysis might have held more weight back in 2020 when those groups helped to shape the debate that happened inside of that Democratic Party primary, not in 2024 when they hold basically no sway. Kamala abandoned all of the positions mentioned in their piece to the extent she ever really supported them at all. She ran on being a cop, adopted Republican immigration positions, embraced Liz Cheney, and literally never talked about trans issues at all. In other words, not only does this argument fail to threaten the status quo, it just reinforces it. The argument also may have had made more sense if, rather than including a bunch of basically powerless groups that, contrary to the title, Democrats have no trouble constantly saying no to, the op-ed looked at groups like AIPAC and the Democratic Majority for Israel, who have actually been insanely influential in the 2024 world of politics. AOC made this point on Twitter and is now predictably being smeared as an anti-Semite. She wrote, quote, "If people want to talk about members of Congress being overly influenced by a special interest group pushing a wildly unpopular agenda that pushes voters away from Democrats, then they should be discussing AIPAC." She is obviously correct. Their money has shaped everything from the crackdown on campus protests to the defeat of even mild critics of Israel to the Kamala Harris's own refusal to break from Biden on one of his worst issues. And it wasn't just these lefty groups that came in for scrutiny, though, in the pages of the New York Times. Gentleson also takes a shot at the antitrust movement. Here's the quote. "By wishing away these complexities, a coalition-first mindset produces many candidates who are the inverse of what voters want. People with the cultural sensibilities of Yale Law School graduates who cosplay as populists by over-relying on niche issues like Federal Trade Commission antitrust actions." To start with, the structure of corporate power is far from a niche issue. In addition, it's truly funny that this line, including the Yale part, could just as easily describe the now victorious J.D. Vance as anyone inside of the Democratic coalition, something that our friend and antitrust advocate Matt Stoller pointed out. But most importantly, this line is actually the key to unlocking an understanding of what is really going on inside of this article. The Biden antitrust agenda was hated by the Democratic donor class, who went to war with Lina Khan in every way they knew how. So it is quite convenient that in this piece, attempting to blame the left for an election manifestly lost by the centrists, Gentleson also seeks to throw overboard the parts of the Biden agenda which actually did threaten the class interests of those in the status quo camp. In fact, as Jeet here points out, a much larger problem for Kamala was the fact that she let donors talk her out of highlighting the most potent parts of her economic platform, including backing away from the Biden administration's terrific trust-busting record. Jeet highlights this New York Times reporting that Kamala's corporate allies and donors hated the price gouging ban and pressured her to limit its reach. The Times reports, quote, "The price gouging touched on a broader anxiety among Ms. Harris's corporate allies, who were worried that her economic policies might cater to the progressive wing of the Democratic Party." The article also notes that Kamala backed off a hike in the capital gains tax to appease these donors and remained studiously ambiguous, their words, on a tax for the ultra-rich. Now, these are the freaking people the Democrats actually need to learn how to say no to. Another New York Times report includes details about how Kamala's super PAC found that an ad on price gouging tested through the roof in terms of effectiveness, yet it barely saw the light of day. Quote, "Another memo issued days later pointed out very high-performing ads that have yet to get a big spend. One ad, Future Forward said, had ranked in the 100th percentile, meaning it was the most effective, yet it had virtually never been aired." So here, everybody, is the ad that Kamala's donors did not want you to see.
I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message because you work hard for your paycheck. You should get to keep more of it. As president, I'll make that my top priority.
The donors, the billionaires, the consultants, the corrupt establishment itself, those are the interests that need to be told no, that need to be purged wholesale. Any analysis that fails to make this case is nothing more than a defense of the Democratic Party status quo. And Saagar, one of the things that got a lot of note in that.
Hey guys, if you want to see what I had to say to Krystal's monologue, not just this one, all of them going back to the very beginning, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com.